Good morning. My name's Mike Kelleher. I'm a solution sales manager for Sony Electronics. And today I'll be presenting Riot Games Follow the Sun eSport remote production case study. Typically there's a Q&A after the presentation. I thought it might be a little bit engaging if anyone can just raise their hand if you need some clarity or have questions within the presentation. Please feel free. Also, I have my business cards right behind that projector, so please grab and take one if you'd like. That's this morning's agenda. We will start with business objectives and benefits. So a little bit about Riot Games. So they're based in Los Angeles, California. They're an American video game developer, publisher, and esports tournament organizer. Founded in 2006, Riot Games is best known for its flagship title, League of Legends. That's a multiplayer online esport powerhouse. League of Legends, it attracts millions of fans worldwide, has over 800 professional players. They compete on more than 100 teams in 9 regional leagues. Each league consists of 10 teams that compete year-round in 2 seasonal splits. So a few notes before we begin, as you'll hear me mention the following technology through the presentation. The Nevion Virtuoso is a software-defined media node platform, and that basically handles real-time transport, monitoring, and processing. UDC, color correction, it performs a variety of functions for the Nevion product line. Nevion Video iPath is a media orchestration platform used by broadcasters and telecom service providers to manage and control the flow of video, audio, and data through SDI and IP networks. Riot Direct, which is very important, is a dedicated fiber network that is owned and operated by Riot Games. So basically that Riot Direct fiber network is going to interconnect a whole bunch of POPs globally. So here's where it all started 6 years ago. Riot, an existing customer, utilized Nevion's Virtuoso for the remote production of the 2019 League of Legends World Championship. So this is 2019. It's when the initial conversation started. This is the POC. This made Riot Games the first organization to utilize JPEG XS technology for transmission, which is significant. The event was held in Paris, France, represented by the blue box towards the middle there, and featured 2 remote production sites. The English language show was produced by Riot's headquarters in Berlin, Germany, right over here. That was 560 miles from Paris, and the world feed was produced in Los Angeles. This is early on, 2019, and that was 5,600 miles away from Paris, France, all in under 100 millisecond latency, which is stupendous. Now that's JPEG XS, and it is over a dedicated fiber network, so that is important to note. So what did Riot Games need? Project Striker is what they called it, and they're developing a worldwide production system to facilitate live events from centralized data centers. The plan includes 3 remote broadcast centers, which are all called RBCs, remote broadcast centers. One's in Dublin, Ireland, The second is in Seattle, and a third is in the works in Asia. So think back to the follow the sun. We're talking about time zones: Seattle, Washington, Dublin, Ireland, and Asia. They're thinking about Singapore, but that's to be determined. These RBCs will be interconnected to support a global follow the sun production model, allowing for simultaneous event production and seamless handoffs over time zones. The first RBC went live in 2022, Seattle 2023, and Asia is in the works. Any questions thus far? Okay. The project aims to build infrastructure for follow the sun remote production. This involves establishing connectivity between global venues and those central hubs. Those central hubs are the RBCs, where the content is produced and then forwarded to OTT playout, which is handled by AWS. So I don't want to block the projector there, but if you see the venue ingest, SDI and MADI are in the transportable contribution kits. In those contribution kits are Nevion Virtuosos. Those are those encoder, decoder processors that we spoke of earlier. JPEG XS to the production hubs. The production hubs are the RBCs, those remote broadcast centers, and then off for cloud playout and distribution. All of the RBCs are powered by AWS. AWS also handles the data analytics and bursting connectivity. So for the most part, these RBCs are going to be able to handle everything thrown at them, but should something extra be needed, they're going to have AWS for bursting. All right, here's an example of how a follow the sun remote production concept works. An event taking place in South Africa, right there at the bottom in black, can be remotely produced by any combination of the three hubs and then distributed globally. So basically, you have the event and you'll have virtuosos in those contribution kits, okay? So they're gonna send those sources to a POP, a point of presence. I'm going to assume everybody knows what the POP is here. And then from the POP, those are interconnected to the different RBCs, Seattle, Dublin, Singapore. This is a theoretical, just for the sake of this demonstration. Each RBC has full redundancy. And of course, there's redundancy twofold, because if something happens to Seattle, you have Dublin, and then theoretically Singapore, or even the Los Angeles-based headquarters. So if Seattle goes down, if there's a fiber cut, there's a clean switch or a clean failover to Dublin. If Dublin then goes down as well, we got bigger problems than League of Legends. So we'll be okay. But all joking aside, and then it'll fail over to AWS. So Riot needed a solution to manage media flows between remote venues and the remote broadcast centers via their wide area network, Riot Direct. This involved using those contribution kits we just spoke of for SDI-based venues and fixed media nodes at IP-enabled RBCs to ensure reliable, low latency, and bandwidth-optimized transport of feeds in both directions. So we also need the feeds coming back to each RBC for confidence monitoring and other sorts of multi-view, which is really important. I do want to point out, so we're talking about SDI-based venues and IP-enabled RBCs. So these RBCs were built greenfield. And anytime you're building something from scratch, these days, it's for the most part going to be IP. You're going to have some encoders and decoders, but that's always to support the legacy. So I get a lot of customers that are new to the business, and they ask, hey, why are we always dealing with baseband and SDI? Well, the connectivity is contingent on the end users. So all of the venues, they're all baseband, they're all SDI, so that's here to stay. You can build an all IP truck, the Amazon Thursday night truck from Game Creek, that's all IP, but they need to have SDI connectivity via these gateways, because anytime you're patching into a venue, you need, all the venues have SDI. And so it's a pretty penny to upgrade, so you have to support both. People say all the time, why doesn't everyone just go IP? It's not that easy. There are large capital investments in this this SDI infrastructure, and that's the reason why we're always including both in unison. As this project evolved, a suitable management layer was required. Enter video iPath orchestration to manage all media control. So when this all started, we were talking about the Reykjavik finals and Paris and point A to point B. But now it has evolved into all of the different RBCs, and when you're talking about global distribution, and who knows where the event could be. The event can be in hundreds or thousands of different locations, and it's being distributed via cloud to 20, 30 different languages. So there's thousands upon thousands of audio feeds, all in MADI, tons of SDI. At that point, you need an orchestrator. So if you're just talking about, a college campus and there's 4 feeds and maybe a couple of dozen audios, maybe an SDN manager or an orchestrator is not needed. But at this scale, it most certainly is for monitoring, health and diagnostics, the works. You need that peace of mind that an orchestrator is going to deliver, and it's going to make your operators' lives a lot easier. So when Riot first came to Sony Nevion, they were looking for effectiveness, efficiency, better working conditions, and resiliency. I think a lot of customers are looking for all that. So in that first pillar there, they accomplished operational effectiveness by centralizing production staff for all the remote events. That was a big deal, because the days of trying to procure EVS operators or Sony TDs or someone that's going to run the grass switcher are over. That in and of itself could be a nightmare. They're in Thailand or Moscow or whatever. Esports is big here. It's huge in every other region. So having everyone in that one central facility is a big deal, and they were able to do that. Efficiency, obviously, fewer staff and equipment sent to each venue. What are they actually sending to those venues? Some people call them fly packs, stage boxes. We call them contribution kits. So they have these, the ones in the early, like 2023, 2024, they had 3 Virtuosos, a Cisco switch, and that was it. So with about 4 RU, they were able to support what used to require a truck. So they don't roll any more trucks. They don't have to procure or coordinate any pop-up facilities. They don't have to seek any talent. All that's over. They need to send one contribution kit. And That contribution kit has actually just been updated to include ME80s, a Sony ME80. And on a side note, the Virtuoso and the ME80 are both being featured at the Sony booth. So please come by and take a look. Working conditions, this is my personal favorite. So the Follow the Sun provides seamless handoff from one staff facility to another, allowing better working conditions. Now, at first glance, a lot of people see this and like, oh, that's great. You know, everyone can work a 9 to 5 or an 8 to 4, but it's really about what we all want, and that's flexibility. So you have a TD in Seattle, and he needs to care for a child or an older parent. He could do the second shift or the midnight shift. The same for everyone in the other facilities. It is Follow the Sun, and it is a big deal. There are no dark days, so they are full-time employees. These RBCs do not hire freelancers. So a lot of operators and technicians in our industry, they don't necessarily have there's a lot of work, but it's kind of bursting and it's erratic. Here, you get a regular 40 or something along those lines, a regular work week that's consistent and that you can count of. What about dark days? That's okay. Dark days are used for training and refinement. If there are no events, you're still working that day. So working conditions, it's a better work-life balance, which is really important. I know too many people that, they don't see their families for a month, and then they're home for 3 weeks, and their hours are all over the place. So I love the fact that, if you want to work an 8 to 4 or a 9 to 5, you can, but if you can't, there's always going to be an event in Asia or Europe, and it's very accommodating. And it's 2025, we need to have flexible schedules. We all have too much responsibility, right? Resiliency. So greater resilience by ensuring that any production location can be used and that each facility offers full redundancy. So, a switcher goes down in Seattle, that doesn't mean we need Dublin, Singapore, or wherever. They have redundant switchers there, redundant EVS, you name it. But should everything go down, then you also have another facility as well. And then, AWS is that, emergency insurance policy. Here's a quote from Scott Adamantz, Riot Games Senior Manager of Infrastructure Engineering. Having worked with Nevion for a couple of years already, we knew that Nevion's products, expertise, and experience would enable us to build an IP solution that would allow for more global efficiency for our esports productions, and it certainly has. That quote is a couple of years old, and we have continued, Sony and Nevion, to build out on that Riot infrastructure worldwide. Any questions thus far? All right. The project. Okay, so the project was a close collaboration between Riot Games, Sony, Nevion, who provided the solution, products and services, and NTC, National Teleconsultants. They're now a Deloitte company, I should mention that. And they were responsible for design, engineering, implementation. In other words, they were the systems integrator. All right, so Nevion services, which is an important part of our solution. So in addition to providing the equipment and software, Nevion offered several professional services for the project, including solution design, LAN-WAN handoff architecture, media security model, and testing, troubleshooting, particularly NMOS interfaces, What does that mean? That's big. We don't just all of a sudden drop ship a video iPath to a facility. It is our responsibility, Sony's responsibility, to ensure that all the devices in the production environment are interoperable. So is that EVS speaking to VIP? Are they all working in harmony? Everything has to be on the same page, or the orchestrator is not worth its weight. So, and you know, everyone's implementation of NMOS is different. I don't know how. I thought that was supposed to be a standard, but you know, it just is. I mean, even SRT, there's so many different implementations of that standard. It's like, you know, imagine if I gave you a Phillips head screwdriver and all of a sudden it was a flathead. It's like, wait, there's a standard here, but there's not. So anyhow, we run into issues with NMOS for interoperability. And the way we clear that hurdle is because video iPath is open architecture, which is huge. Not a lot of orchestrators on the market have an open architecture. So we can easily develop, I say easily, it's not that easy. It takes a few weeks, and I'm not doing the work. But we can create drivers and API integration in order to tweak exactly what the customer needs that unit to deliver. So, you know, you have XYZ device, and there's certain parameters on that device that it can control, but it can't start, stop, or it can't do this or that. Well, we have to make sure that we QA and that orchestrator can control every aspect. So that's really important, because at the end of the day, you know, we're talking about Sony and Nevion here, but there is a variety of different vendors. And these operators have a lot on their plate, so they need a single pane of glass in order to control the entire environment. You can't bring someone else new and say, hey, you need to understand the High-Vision Makito, the Appear X platform, the Evert Scorpion, the Sony Nevia. The orchestrator gives an easy button, or the closest thing there is to it. Finally, a full support package covering compression, system configuration, which is dialing in and out the bit rate of whatever codec that you're going to be using. Control system deployment, I just went over that with interoperability, and training was provided throughout. Training is a big deal, because as you cycle in different people, new hires, or perhaps there's a promotion, training is an important part. This stuff's not hard, but it does require a certain amount of time to ramp up. Okay, so I added this because I thought it was important to give a quick timeline. So the project achieved several key milestones included here for context. And I also wanted to show it wasn't turnkey, because this was the early days. I can't think of anyone that was doing this this early. So it started back in 2019. A successful proof of concept was executed, demonstrating the effectiveness of the Virtuoso with JPEG XS during the League of Legends final in Paris. Okay, that's 2019. 2021, Virtuosos were used for the League of Legends finals in Reykjavik, Iceland, where SDI and MADI over SMPTE ST2110 was tested successfully. At this point, Video iPath was included as the network orchestrator, leading to the Dublin RBC, Regional Broadcast Center, solution going live in April of 2022. So, you know, everything was okay, the transmission between 2019 and 2021. In 2022, they realized, A, we're there's so many different sources and signals. We need an SDN manager. And number two, we've grown exponentially. We need a broadcast controller because our operators are overwhelmed. I need a broadcast control system I just want one interface. I don't want these, you go to grandma's house, you get like 5 different remote controls. Just give me one. That's it. So, okay. So within the next year, Riot requested video iPath support, broadcast control. We just spoke about that. And that's not a switch. So Nevion, how to develop and implement. So they have video iPath, and it's in Dublin saying, this is fantastic, but there's a pool of devices that it's not controlling to our liking. It discovers it, so they connect, it does some things, so that requires a couple of months of tweaking and development, and then everything's just right. It's an open architecture, so that could take other vendors a bit more time, but with our product, it's actually quite fast for what it is. The Seattle RBC, Facility 2 of 3, was deployed in September of 2023, and that mirrored Dublin's architecture, but it added a Sony MLS X1 modular stackable vision mixer. So they were so happy with the end result of the Dublin RBC, they mirrored it for Seattle, adding the MLS X1 because the growth was so great and fast. They chose the Sony because it is modular and it is stackable. It's a switcher that will grow with your business. All right, so we will talk about the solution. So the solution's built around Sony's Network Live offering, including several key components: network and resource orchestration. Nevion Video iPath serves as the single orchestrator layer for WAN media connectivity, enabling Riot to connect contribution kits with centralized production infrastructure in data centers. So think venues to the RBCs. It dynamically manages the media flows, optimizes bandwidth usage, and configures the Virtuoso media node for JPEG XS, compression, and flow protection. So it has integrated level monitoring. Video iPath also serves as the broadcast controller. We had covered that. So basically, VIP is taking that Virtuoso and it's switching it to whatever codec is required for a particular install. In this instance, it's always going to be JPEG XS, with exception, and that's coming up in a slide. So, media transport. Nevion's software-defined media node, Virtuoso, is deployed in SMPTE ST2110 enabled data centers at the RBC and in the contribution kits at the locations. It handles everything including JPEG XS, video compression, MADI processing, IPME functionality. The IPME functionality is basically LAN to WAN handoff, multicast to unicast. So anytime in our world of video distribution, when you're traversing a WAN, it's going to be in unicast. And that IPME that's built into the Virtuoso also serves as a security model, or what we would better know as a firewall. So you're protecting all of the end devices within your local network or VLAN. Flow protection, FEC, so forward error correction across the WAN as well. That's built in, so you do have that. Hybrid processing, Nevion Virtuoso is utilized for audio and video processing, not mentioned here, but also monitoring. The Sony MLS X1 video switching. That's just one unit. Again, that's stackable. Super cool, by the way. And the TAG MV9000 multi-viewer. I'm a big fan of the TAG product. We have deep integration with TAG. So when there's monitoring, or I should say when there's health and diagnostics needed at a very deep level, when you're needing like deep probing, that's when we'll bring in TAG, and they're excellent at that. So Video iPath does deliver health and diagnostics and does so very well. But when you're at installations and workflows that require something extremely deep, we'll bring in TAG for the big guns in health and diagnostics. Okay, so overall system design. This diagram provides the current system, highlighting the use of contribution kits at the venues, 2 remote production hubs, RBCs, located in Dublin and Seattle, and the cloud playout. Not included in this slide, but important to note, Riot recently added the Sony ME80s Media Edge processor to facilitate events in locations that are bandwidth restrictive. The ME80 delivers HEVC, so that's a low bitrate codec, which is required for venues that experience connectivity challenges, in contrast to JPEG XS, which is high bitrate. So HEVC is a popular option to reliably deliver great quality media in low bitrate with ultra low latency. Therefore, all venues and locations are supported regardless of venue connectivity or limitations. So let me dive just a little bit into that. So basically, I've had questions before. They say, well, wait a second, you have a dedicated fiber network. What do you care about low bit rate? Everything should be JPEG XS, because that's just, that's a fantastic codec. High quality, low latency. Well, so we know they're never going to have that fiber network connect directly to every venue. Okay, we're at the mercy of that first hop, or what some people call network access, or depending on your perspective, the first mile or last mile. There's a lot of there could be unreliability there. So at most of the venues that Riot support, or Riot holds these events at, they're going to use JPEG XS. So our primary goal is, how do I get the signals from the venue to the POP? Once it gets to the POP, that's going to provide, as we all know, the broader connectivity directly to the RBC. But if I'm, someplace in, Southeast Asia, and they have a congested network, and it's not going to be able to handle JPEG XS, well, we bring in the ME80, and they just, they added 8 ME80s per contribution kit. So that contribution kit now has 3 Virtuosos, which they're going to use for the most part. That's JPEG XS, and ME80s, which will support HEVC, which is low bit rate. So I'm up in that venue, and I don't have the bandwidth. I'm going to employ a low bit rate solution, and that's going to be the ME80. Someone might ask, well, why wouldn't you just put the HEVC in Virtuoso? Virtuoso did not support HEVC until now. So now it supports HEVC, and it has the best of every world. Any questions thus far? Yes, sir.
How big is the JPEG XS that it wouldn't handle a small bit rate?
Okay, so the question from Michael is, how big is the JPEG XS? You mean, what's the bit rate of it? Could be any, it depends on how they have that dialed in, but you're looking at anywhere from 25 to 35 megabits. But you'd be surprised. Sometimes you can be at a venue, and that's just too much. So it's really about, they have these contribution kits. Here's the Virtuoso. Use the Virtuoso. Always use JPEG XS, but just in case, there goes HEVC. And moving forward, as they build more contribution kits, they're going to be outfitted with Virtuosos exclusively, but HEVC is important. At the end of the day, you'd be hard-pressed to find someone challenging for compression and live production. Nothing's going to beat JPEG XS. That said, maybe 8 out of 10 people couldn't tell the difference in quality between HEVC and JPEG XS. I can hardly tell, but JPEG XS is definitely supreme. And of course, if for storage purposes, you're always going to want HEVC, so on and so forth. All right, next slide. So this diagram provides a detailed view of media transport between the venues and the RBC data centers using Virtuoso and Video iPath as the Nevion solution. So there's a lot of granular data up here. I included this slide just to, take a look, and if you have any questions on this diagram or at all, visit me at the booth, and we can continue the conversation there. But I did want to just show this snapshot of the entire workflow. All right, and we'll conclude with a one-slide summary. So in conclusion, this one-slide summary shows that Riot had a challenge to find a vendor to reliably manage their high-value media with great precision on a global scale, truly a global scale. They chose Nevion, who could deliver the transport, broadcast control, and SDN orchestration in a one-vendor solution. So you're going to see a lot of vendors that have a broadcast controller or an SDN manager. A lot of people use the term orchestrator, but what defines an orchestrator? In my mind, it's both a broadcast control system and an SDN manager. You need to do both. Why? Because you can't expect your operators to understand all these different systems and interfaces. So one vendor solution is big, and also the media transport with Virtuoso and the ME80. The outcome was a highly successful system that produced great balance, effectiveness, efficiency, and resiliency, and improved the work-life balance, most important, of their operational and production staff. I'll conclude with this. So Nevion continues to drive all the transport and orchestration business for Riot Games, all their facilities and all their events. So we started this relationship in 2019. It's now 2025. They are bigger and badder than ever. All their contribution kits, all their orchestration, and their broadcast control systems are driven through Sony's Network Live, specifically Video iPath and Virtuoso. That concludes the presentation, but I will take any questions. And if you don't have any questions right now, please find me at the booth, and we can definitely chat. Any questions? All right, well, thank you. I appreciate everyone's time. All right.